They say justice is blind, but what happens when it recognizes the man in chains standing before it? Judge Evelyn Reed was about to find out on a rainy Tuesday morning in a bustling downtown courthouse. The clerk's voice, a monotone drone, cut through the quiet hum of the courtroom. The state versus Adrian Stone. Evelyn's pen froze in midair. 30 years, a lifetime of memories, came crashing down in a single, devastating second. The court hummed with its usual rhythm. Lawyers whispered in corners. A custodian polished a stubborn patch of marble, and a tired mother shushed her child in the back row. But for Evelyn, time stopped. She didn't even blink when the door swung open. He walked in slowly, wrists cuffed and swollen, a worn prison jumpsuit hanging from his frame. But it was the eyes that stole the air from her lungs. A familiar ache twisted in her stomach, one she hadn't felt since her days in the Army. Yes, the Army, because Evelyn Reed wasn't always a judge. She was a soldier, Private Reed, barely 20, sharp and resilient, the only woman of color in her unit, the only one who never broke during the 4 a.m. screams. None of that mattered the day Sergeant Briggs spat a word in her face. Token. You want respect, he'd snarled. Then act like you belong here, not like a favor in a uniform. That day, she learned that silence wasn't protection. It was surrender. Decades later, she sat on a bench, watching Adrian Stone shuffle to the defendant's table like a man already condemned. He didn't look up, but he didn't have to. She knew him. The jutting jaw, the slight limp, the habit of cracking his knuckles, left hand first, then the right. Adrian Stone, her childhood best friend, who taught her to ride a bike and patched her scraped knees with a bandage and a lie about a hero's wound. She remembered the last time she saw him. He was 15. 2 cops cornered him outside a corner store. No weapon, no threat, just a boy with a hoodie and a bag of chips. They threw him to the ground without a thought. And she, paralyzed by fear, was too scared to speak up, too afraid to be next. A guilt she carried like a heavy stone. The prosecutor, a sharp-faced man named Marcus Cole, cleared his throat. The defendant is charged with grand larceny, commercial property theft, and alleged gang affiliation. Her fingers tightened on the pen. She reviewed the file. No fingerprints, no clear video footage, just a vague description of a build and a shaky eyewitness across the street. Adrian stood motionless, back ramrod straight, jaw clenched. It was a language she understood. Not defiance, but a stoic calm he adopted whenever the world ganged up on him, when teachers wrongly accused him, when landlords eyed his family with suspicion. He didn't shout or cry. He endured. And now, he was enduring again. The worst part was his lawyer, a public defender named Harold Kessler, a ghost in a wrinkled suit. He didn't spare Adrian a glance, not a word, nothing. Then, from the back of the courtroom, a woman in a faded cardigan stood up, her hands trembling. "Excuse me, Your Honor, I'm sorry, but Adrian helps at the shelter." "He's not." A bailiff moved in quickly. "Ma'am, please be seated." His voice was low, but his hand was firm. She sank back in her seat, a look of shame washing over her as she met Adrian's eyes, then looked away. Her fingers gripped her purse strap, and her lips pressed into a thin, tight line that a few muffled snickers rippled through the audience when the prosecutor quipped. Maybe he should have stolen something useful, like a brain. Even the stenographer managed a small smile. But Evelyn did not. She saw Adrian's fingers twitch, a barely perceptible tremor, the same way he used to when he wanted to punch a wall but knew he shouldn't. He didn't react, just endured. And that's when it all changed. "This isn't a man of good character," the prosecutor declared, his voice rising. "This is a man who chose his path, just like the people he associates with." That sentence, those exact words, lit a fire inside her. It was the same accusation spat at her in the barracks, condemned without reason or evidence, simply for existing. That day, she had swallowed it whole. But not today, not again. Leaning forward, her pen still in her hand, she fixed her gaze on the prosecutor. Her voice, calm and measured, was a deceptive facade for the storm raging within. "Mr. Stone," she said slowly, "do you understand the charges against you?" He gave a single, curt nod without lifting his head. But she wasn't looking for his answer. She was scanning the room. Then, with a breath she barely heard, she spoke. For the record, I must make a statement. I have known Mr. Stone since he was 10 years old. He was my neighbor, my friend. A gasp swept through the courtroom. Martin Givens, the prosecutor, shot to his feet as if he'd been stung. Your Honor, with all due respect, this is a conflict of interest. You must recuse yourself. She raised a hand, a subtle gesture that commanded immediate silence. What this represents, she said, her voice firmer, is an opportunity to remember that justice does not operate in a vacuum. Martin clenched his jaw. He was one of those lawyers who saw every courtroom as a political stage, a press suit, a sharp smile, and speeches tailored to impress. Are you telling me you could be impartial, Judge? After all this? He asked, his voice laced with venom. She met his gaze without flinching. I'm telling you that being impartial does not mean ignoring a life story and focusing solely on one arrest. It means knowing when the system needs to look beyond the paperwork. Then she turned to the gallery, her voice wavering slightly. I remember Adrian Stone. I remember the boy who helped me with my bike and carried me home on his back when I twisted my ankle. I remember the night someone spray-painted a hateful word on his garage, and no one, not even me, said a word. A deep, profound silence settled over the room. And for the first time, Adrian breathed differently, as if someone had finally truly seen him. She continued, I also remember something else. Whenever he was beaten down, not physically, but emotionally, he didn't become violent. He became silent. And that silence, that very silence, is what I see here today. And I will not ignore it. Martin stepped forward, his voice sharper, louder. This is the law, Your Honor, not a sentimental story. We're talking about theft, about gangs, about a record. She faced him squarely. The law without compassion is not justice. It is automated punishment. Martin's voice exploded. This man is not a victim. He grew up just like the rest of us. He had choices. He made bad ones. He is guilty. But it wasn't just rage. It was frustration, a bitter, envious fury of someone who believed they suffered more and worked harder and now saw another receiving a mercy they never knew. Maybe his anger wasn't aimed at Adrian, but at what Adrian represented, a reflection of himself and the choices he had made. And Evelyn saw it. The wound in his pride, the desperate need to believe that pain could only be redeemed through punishment. But she didn't waver. She turned to Adrian and, in a voice that was almost maternal, said, This court will not punish pain with more pain. She took a deep breath and delivered the sentence. Instead of prison, Mr. Stone will complete 12 months of community mentorship, participate in a county work program, and receive psychological counseling tailored to trauma. The sentence is effective immediately. Absolute silence. A gasp. A notebook clattered to the floor. Then, a murmur of "it's about time" from the back. Adrian stood frozen, his eyes wide, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. For the first time, he looked human, not a file number, not a case, just a man. Martin didn't scream or protest. He stood still, flushed, his hands trembling, not from anger, but from confusion. He watched as everything he believed in crumbled before something more powerful than the law, grace. He walked out without a word. Later that afternoon, Adrian walked out of the courthouse doors, uncuffed and in his own clothes. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over his shoulders. Evelyn watched him from a window inside. He stopped, pulled a wrinkled piece of paper from his pocket. I saved it, he said. She took it with trembling hands, a card, with her own childish handwriting. Don't forget me. I'll never forget you. He never did. She had, but now they both remembered. There was no hug, no long speech, just a look and a small nod. And that was enough. Was it justice or favoritism? Does compassion belong in the courtroom or only cold, hard rules? The answer is never simple. But one thing is clear. Justice doesn't begin with a gavel. It begins with the courage to listen.